Hello, gorgeous. Welcome to HG Radio, everything beauty, cancer, and inspiration. Here is your co-founder and host, Kim Becker. Hello, gorgeous. Welcome to HG Radio, everything beauty, cancer, and inspiration. Here is your co-founder and host, Kim Becker.
Hello, gorgeous, and thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Kim Becker, and this is Hello, Gorgeous, everything beauty, cancer, and inspiration on Society Bites Radio, social interaction for the mind and soul. Our episode today is brought to you by Amplified Marketing Group. They specialize in affordable mobile solutions that will get you noticed and help you retain customers. Check them out on yourphoneguy.com. That's URPHONEGUY.com. Our guest today is Tieal Bishop. Tieal is the CEO and founder of A Rosie Place for Children, a nonprofit organization that provides skilled nursing care for children who are medically fragile and a respite for the parents who care for them. Hi, Tieal, and welcome to the show.
Hello, my friend Kim Becker. Hello, gorgeous, I should say. Oh, good to hear your voice.
It's so good to hear your voice. You know, I'm so excited to have you here and to share the work that you do. And, you know, our friendship goes back, clear back into the beginning of Hello Gorgeous. I'll never forget you and Mike and I sitting down at Panera because you were several years maybe ahead of us when we were just getting ready to start the nonprofit. And you were one of the people that we knew locally that had actually started a nonprofit. And you were so gracious to sit with us and answer our questions and, you know, kind of help us go through. And obviously your guidance has been wonderful because we're still here 14 years later. So I appreciate it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that day well. It was my pleasure to do.
Well, so
and
tell us
you've done so well.
Well, thank you.
You've done so well in the last 14 years. So
amazing
work you guys are doing, and in honor of Mike, I just love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we have the best job in the whole world, and he'd be really upset with me if I didn't carry this on. So I have to keep going.
100% agreed with you.
That's right. So tell me a little bit about how A Rosie Place began and that you saw this need and you just kind of followed a passion of yours.
True. So just a little bit of backstory. In 2003, there was a group of us here in South Bend, Indiana, who started to have a discussion just about children who are medically fragile, the lack of support that parents had, the demands for caring for a child that has a medical condition, 7 days a week, 365 days a year with no break. And that was just not acceptable to a lot of us who were in this community, seeing these families and children. So I always like to say, what's the first thing a lot of people ask me is, what is a medically fragile child? So I think I'll start there. And I just simply always say it's a child who requires medical intervention for just everyday living. So they're not necessarily sick. This is their baseline state of health, and they just require a lot. So whether it's a feeding tube to eat or a breathing tube to just breathe, they clearly require complicated care that not just anybody can deliver. So you can imagine their life is very isolating, right? So
Yes.
They're home with their child. It's extraordinary. These parents are extraordinary people. They are warriors, I always say, because it is a vigilant, just 24-hour-a-day job. And really is, there's no break. It's not like your mom or grandma can just come over, right, and take care of the kids and say, hey, let me jump in and help, unless they're a skilled nurse who knows how to do it.
That's right.
So clearly that was the need. The need was there was no place for these children to go outside of a long-term care institution. And that was just not acceptable. So we decided to come together and really look at what's the best thing we could provide these parents. And that was really where the creation of A Rosie Place for Children started.
But this mission is personally important to you. So will you share that story with me?
It is. I'm happy to. So, oh heavens, I think it's about 21 years ago now. I had a child that was medically fragile. He just got a respiratory virus called RSV, which we've heard more about these days, but not so much 21 years ago. And it's really just a really bad cold, right? Kind of a lot like what we're seeing today, to be honest, but it was more of an influenza type. And it really just tore up his lungs. He coded twice. We were in hospital for 6 months, Kim. I remember I quit my job. I moved into the Ronald McDonald House in Indianapolis and lived there for about 4.5 of those months. So it was a long journey. But thankfully, we were able to bring him home, and we started the long process of what does care look like at home now for not just a regular infant. You know, Max was now 9 months old, so he had to learn how to eat again and learn how to sit up again. So it was quite exhausting. It was really just not what you dream for your child, right? I mean, in essence, that's really what it is. Mm-hmm. So we had 7 therapies a week. I was up most nights taking care of him. And I remember there was just really no place to go. It was very isolating. It was one of those situations that you find yourself in, and you just think, is anyone else doing this? Is anyone else going through this? And you really start to wonder. You start to ask yourself, because I remember I was so adamant. I wanted to bake something. I can't remember what it was, but it required oil. And so I was determined I think it was a cake or cookies or something. So I decided I was going to pack Max up and go to the grocery store, which was only about 2 miles down the road from my house. And I was going to get the oil and come back and make cookies. So by the time I packed up all of his equipment, his ventilator, his feeding tube, his emergency supplies that if something happens, you need. And I went and got the oil and I came back. It took me over an hour. So guess how often I did that again? Not very.
Not very.
I mean, they were good cookies, but I don't know if it was worth all that. What should have taken 15 minutes took well over an hour. And so I just realized, my life has changed, right? It's just going to be different. And what does that look like? And so thankfully, gratefully, Max outgrew his medical condition, which is so rare. He had a ventilator, a G-tube, he had all of it. We had, like I said, 9 therapies. I think at one point he was on 22 medications in a day. So it was pretty extensive, and slowly but surely, and probably because of a tenacious mother that I know, he started to outgrow his condition. I know a lot of tenacious mothers, so I don't mean to be catty about that, but, I was like, we're going to do this, and so I really dove into therapies and what supports could we give this child to help his development, really. And then obviously the healthcare part, that had nothing to do with me. That was just grace. And so he outgrew, I would say, his medical condition. We weaned him off the ventilator. We eventually weaned him off a feeding tube. And so as thrilled as I was, right now it becomes another new reality. And how do you start treating him and taking care of him in that way? And so today he's not without his challenges. He has some for sure, but he doesn't have any medical components. So I think at that point I just said, what are all the rest of the parents that are going to do that are like me, that have this child or children and their condition, they're never going to outgrow their condition. This is going to be something that they deal with either, for at least the near foreseeable future, if not forever. And so that was really my passion, was parent advocacy, and how do I be a voice for all those that are too busy to have a voice? Because I remember that it was a very busy time, and it's full of stress. If you can imagine, your child's on a breathing machine, and if you don't do the right thing, they might stop breathing. Well, that's a whole nother level
right.
of parenting.
Well, and you don't want to leave your child with someone then. And so, just the emotions that would go through that, because of the fact that I'm sure the parent would feel, for lack of a better word, trapped. They don't want to leave their child. Like you said, grandma just can't come over and watch the child because, and the fear, talk about the emotions that go along with that, being with having to care for a medically fragile child. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, I would say it's similar to grief in a way, right? We've heard of these, there's stages of grief.
Yes.
No, this is not the dream that we had for our children, right? It's sort of, you realize that dream, they're not going to probably play soccer, will they even be able to drive or ever get married? All the things that you would think of that a, let's say, normal child will get to do. So you kind of grieve that and you go through that process. But as the child grows, right, they have different milestones. And so you have to readjust. And what we found in a lot of these parents is a lot of it is kind of like post-traumatic stress, right? It's you've had this idea of a reality, and then all of a sudden that was dramatically changed, either on the day that they were born, or if your child had an accident and, dove in a lake that was too shallow, and now you have a whole different child to take care of. So it's really a smattering of emotions and reactions that go on for a long period of time. It's not like one day you just get over that, because you're constantly and being vigilant about their care. I remember a dad, he once said, and I think he said it so well, he said, your priorities and dreams for your child change, but what's universal for all parents is that you really just want your child to feel loved. Mm-hmm. And boy, if that's not true. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's one thing that all of our parents have. Yeah.
Well, and so I'm very impressed, and you have inspired me more than you ever know. And so I had the opportunity to come out, and I called you one day and said, I want to come and take a tour. I want to see what it is that you guys do. I want a better understanding of what A Rosie Place is all about. And so I came out and I took a tour, and I was just so incredibly impressed. And what I realized was that you and I run parallel courses, because what the parents want for their child and what we want for a woman going through cancer is just simply normalcy. We just want to know, and whatever that normal looks like. And when you're dealing with a medically fragile child, their normal is going to look different than a normal that doesn't have those challenges and those complications. But what I loved that day, and I have used to this day, that was 18 months ago, was your drive to find the yes. And you said, so many of these parents come in and they tell you what these children cannot do. They can't do this. They have to take their medicines, and they're used to the usual barrage of questions when they bring their child to A Rosie Place. But what you do is you find, okay, all right, great. We got all of that, but can they take a bubble bath, or can they go on a swing, or can they paint, or can they do some artwork? That has completely transformed what we do now, because there are times where people would say, oh, well, she can't have a makeover. We're like, okay, no, it's not okay anymore. Now we turn it around to be able to find the yes. And so what you guys have done, I mean, as I was so inspired, and I'm grateful that I have a healthy 17-year-old child, but I was so inspired by what you do and the care you give. And, the jacuzzi, there was a room that had a jacuzzi tub in it, and there was a room with a shower, because that's just what some of the kids maybe couldn't do at home, but they can do here. I talk a little bit more about that, because it inspired me to know it. Like, you just can't even, you don't know how much we talk about you. That was so cool when I brought that back.
I love that. I love to hear that inspired you. And I think, the people that we serve, right, whether they be fragile children or cancer survivors or patients, or just learning about whatever stage they're in, right, you really do just want the best. I mean, that's why we're here, right? So we're not here to say no or what we can't do. We're here to say, what are the opportunities here, and how do we say yes? So, you're right. I won't even deny that. I am thrilled that we always look to, how do we say yes for this child? And the difference on parents' face when they hear that, okay, yeah, we know their medication is this hour, and we know they go to bed at this hour, and we know, all of those regimented schedules that they have, and the medications that it's going to require to keep them healthy. But yeah, what about the bubble bath? And what about, can we go outside and sprinkler? And how about we take a walk in the evening around the property, and let them to be able to get outdoors? And right, it's the best. It's a place of belonging. It's not just a resource, and it's not just a sleep through the night for the parents, which is a phenomenal gift. I think every one of them would tell you that. It is, what is the experience for the child that otherwise they would be missing? Mm-hmm. Right. So we get to provide experience and normalcy, like you said, right? The every